Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for S&A meeting. Pulling up my agenda right here. All right, we're calling this meeting to order at 5:01 p.m. And let me make sure I can see everyone's faces. Awesome. And for roll call, we have myself, Alice Williams, Brady Smith, Jared Osborne, Evelyn, and then we also have Joey, Aaron, Jessica, Miss Lola, and Mr. Patrick. Thank you for joining us. For today, our first thing we need to do is we need to approve our agenda for this meeting. So if we can have I would like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Awesome. Motion from Evelyn with a second from Brady. Thank you so much. And then for the minutes from our meeting last month, at the end of the month on the 27th, we need to approve those minutes. I would like to entertain a motion for so.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Evelyn with a second from Jared. Thank you. And then for reports, myself as chair, I didn't have any reports until about 15 minutes ago. I received an email. Joey, have you received that email as well?
Potentially, I will go look right now, but I had not seen it. I was anticipating we would get one. I didn't know when, so.
Yeah.
We can share that under communications received, and I'll send
Okay.
it out to the board too.
So then for reports, I don't have anything to report today. For the advisors?
The only report that I have, I'm trying to do two things at once. I'm trying to send this in the background, so you all will get the communication. The only two pieces I have, one, and this is more for Alice as a reminder, when we do the motion and second, we have to make sure if there's no objection, then we can move on.
Okay.
Unless we want to do a vote on it. So doing great. Otherwise, I just want to remind you all that we are down to the last couple of meetings that we have of the year. So appreciate you all being here and making time for this. I know we have to wrap up our program reviews. We also have the proposal that Patrick's going to present here in a moment that we'll vote on next week, and maybe a couple other items. So stay strong, but let me know if there's any questions or if you all need anything in the meantime. And I did already introduce last week early, but we do have our other advisor who I will kick it to in case they have any updates. Over to Aaron.
Hi, everybody. I do not have any updates, except that I'm extremely happy to be part of this group, and I'm excited to learn more from you all.
Thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have more advisors. We couldn't do this without y'all. And then ASCWU, any reports from you, Brady?
Yes, main one, it is election week. So if you have not yet voted, please do so. There is a link on the ASCW website, along with, if you walk into the CERC, the wall above the info desk has a ginormous QR code being projected onto it. So that's also an easy way to access it. So I encourage you all to vote. That's for 2 feet or 1 new fee, 1 fee increase, and then our board of directors and a senator election. So that's pretty cool. Other than that, that's probably my only report for this week. I'll have more next week for y'all though.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, I absolutely encourage us all to go vote. I know I'm doing that right after this. Communications received. We have an email that I think Joey's sending around that came from Miss Amber Hofer. I never pronounced that
Yep.
right. I just read this 15 minutes ago. Do we want to take a minute for everyone to read the email right quick?
I can give a brief summary, Alice. I did just send it so you all have it. The email was just sent about 15 minutes ago, so it did just come in. I sent it for you all to see, and so it is a communication received, pretty much in response to your all's deliberation and vote last week, denying the funding for CAT Camp. You will see some pieces in there, and I can answer questions you all may have. But primary reason saying that they believe that it was denied as a result of misinformation about student eligibility, that Amber felt swayed the committee members' perceptions. Gave a brief summary again of what CAT Camp is, and is essentially asking you all to reconsider the funding request at this point in time. So it's a much longer email that is there. You all have received it. It'll get posted on our website as well. But I don't know if there's any questions anyone has in relation to that. I know you all just got it. And I had just read it when Alice made me aware.
I don't have any questions personally. I'm still kind of thinking it through, honestly. It's only been a minute or so. I mean, they've watched the recording, so if they feel there was misinformation, I definitely want to acknowledge that. Brady?
I think the reasoning still stands though, because this is a program that's marketed for incoming students that, yes, hopefully it does allow them to increase retention. But again, it's for students that haven't paid the S&A fee yet. And I know as long as you're enrolled in credits, you technically still count. But also at the core of the subject, one of the points we talked about is we are in an effort reducing our budget right now. And this would allow them to continue to spend the entire budget they were allocated, from my understanding, along with extra money. So we're asking every department to cut by 10%. And we need to be, at the end of the day, we can't approve every single program. We have to make cuts somewhere. So I don't think that we should reconsider this. We made our decision. If there was misinformation, I feel like our advisors would have caught it. But that's what I have to say.
Joey?
Yeah, I was gonna provide one thing with what Brady said, and then just procedurally, because I know you all have not had this come up. I think I know from the conversation maybe where they were getting that the thought and intent behind what was being discussed. I do want to make sure if there was any confusion, I do know I stated this last week, but that this would be an eligible use of S&A funds based on some criteria pieces within there. And that's why they can use their slice funding that they've had previously within this. But I think as Brady just shared, while that was shared, I think you all still went down a path within this. So procedurally, at this point, it's a communication received. You all can discuss. There's not necessarily a motion necessarily. Anything that would happen would have to be made as a motion by a member and seconded and voted on. Otherwise, essentially where we're at would stand with where things are. And so at any point, a member can make a motion to say we'd like to reconsider. I will give you all a general piece of advice that I would say as an advisor in normal circumstances. I would typically not advise that we reconsider motions or votes that you all have already done unless there is truly information that was misinterpreted or misunderstood that impacted your decision making. Then it would be like, yes, okay, you all were given information that we misunderstood. Otherwise, we would have clarified it within those. Otherwise, generally, we want to make sure that we're standing behind that. And so if you all do feel that there was misinformation that you had that impacted your decision making, I think you can discuss that and then if someone wanted to make a motion. Otherwise, if you do not believe that is the case, we would typically not encourage or advise on revisiting deliberations and votes you all have already done. Does that make sense? I'm trying to be very neutral because I can't influence you all one way or the other in this, just procedurally. giving you information.
That helps a lot. I personally didn't feel like I was under the influence of misinformation here. And I really don't like the idea of setting a precedent of reviewing, of reopening former motions. Oh, I see Brandon joined us. Hi, Brandon. To catch you up real quickly, we have received a communication from Miss Amber Hofer about our previous decision. They sent an email you should have just received. We've only just received it. And we're just kind of talking over how that procedurally works. Brady made a statement that he agreed with our former decision and why. I'm inclined to agree with his logic there. But I'm fully open to hearing other voices on this. Are there any thoughts around the room? Jared.
So I think that the issue that has been brought up was one component of our discussion, but I think that as a group, from my understanding, we had agreed that that was largely immaterial to whether or not we should fund, because whether or not they got S&A fees, whether or not they were students, I think we all agreed that people would benefit from the camp and that they were probably considered students. And I think we'd already reached that conclusion. So I feel like there was discussion and we had confusion around the discussion, but I think we reached the same place that, you know, they are at. And I don't think that our decision was necessarily predicated on that. So I feel like there was, you know, other considerations we weighed, which is where we made our decision. So even if we fully concede, you know, what the email says, I believe that we probably still would have made the same decision.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing. If there's no other thoughts, do feel free to bring this up again. I know we just received this. As Joey said, we don't really want a precedent of reopening these, but as we just received these, I do want to give y'all a minute. If y'all want to bring this up again later, maybe next meeting. But after that, I think we should move to public comment. If there's no objections.
I was going to say one thing, Alice, just because I know Brandon wasn't here, if that's okay. I was just going to say, in case you want to add something, Brandon, within it, really what I was sharing before is that the precedent part is typically if you all have voted and deliberated and discussed, we wouldn't necessarily want to reopen those for discussion. However, if you all did believe, which is why I want to make sure that, and that's what Jared and Brady and Alice were talking about, if you all did believe that the decision you made was based on incorrect information or incorrect interpretation or understanding of information, then I think that definitely warrants the need for you all to have further discussion. Because if you all made a decision based on information that we misunderstood, then I think that definitely warrants further conversation. But that's where we don't want to open the general precedent of just continuously revisiting. However, if there is that misunderstanding or misinformation, we would want to.
Thanks, Joey. That helps. If there's no objection, I'd like to move to public comment in consideration of time as we have a presentation coming up. Seeing no objections, opening up the floor for public comment for just a quick minute. No one's here to comment. All right, moving on to new business. We have a guest with us today to make a presentation on the S&A fee and fee alignment proposal. Mr. Patrick, would you like to give your presentation?
I would, and thank you for having me. Joey, is it possible that I guess I can share now. I clicked the button earlier and said I couldn't share. So let me see.
I just gave you permission.
Well, thank you for the permission. Okay, I have the whole new CWU PowerPoint template here. Let's see if I can make this work. Why is it not? There we go. So the topic is aligning student fees to uses. That's a very general topic. And this is me. I'm Patrick or Pat Stanton. I'm the Executive Director of Finance for CWU and a former S&A committee member. I probably spent 11 years on the committee on 2 different terms. Always enjoyed it, seriously. So I'm interested in what the committee does, and I've always found it probably one of the more productive and professional committees on campus. So I'm sure you're continuing that, and it's interesting work. So I'm the Director of Finance, and I've been asked to come in and talk about how the fees that are collected as the S&A fee and the sub fee, the student union building fee, are allocated to different organizations or operations on campus. And I guess I'm invited in because there's dollar signs in front of the numbers, but this discussion really isn't about dollars or money. I don't think. I think it's more about housekeeping. Let me back this up. I hit the wrong button. So right now, the S&A committee, in their quadrennial allocation process, they generally fund sub-engineering, and that's the custodial and maintenance for the entire student union building. And they fund some portion of the student union operations, which is the folks in the, in the information desk and behind the scenes keep everything running. The sub fee funds part of the publicity center, part of KCWU, student involvement, and campus activities. And now that you've all been on the committee for a while, that might seem like a strange situation. I got to quit hitting this button. So how did it get like that? How is it that the building fee is funding services and activities, and the services and activities fee is funding things that relate to the building? Well, 20 years ago, before the new CERC, the old building, it was much smaller. There wasn't a rec center. There wasn't a rec center fee, and things, the operating agreements were just kind of worked out to meet the needs. And when they moved into the new building and the student union building fee went up, they kind of carried forward these old operating agreements, and maybe they were good. Maybe they forced discussions and working together. There was also, from my observation, sometimes, one fee area couldn't afford something, but the students or, the university wanted to provide it. And there's probably a few pieces in here that nobody can really remember how they got like that. So let me go back to this thing. So this is what Lacey provided me. And I think it is important in that, it says the publicity center back to at least 17 has been funded, about $130,000. The allocation for 2024 is going to be probably a smaller allocation than some of the prior years. And a lot of the other ones are actually going down too, but not because of this topic. If they're going down, it's because of the pressure on the budget and the fees created by reduced enrollment and students paying the fees. So when I was asked to come and talk about, asking to consider realigning some of the fees. And after sitting on the committee for 10 or so years, I was trying to think what I would want to know. You know, the first question I would have had is, well, what does this all mean to student services? I don't think that this topic of where the funds are received and maybe where they would go will impact student services today or in the future. Now, student services might be impacted because of budget pressures, but not because of this topic. And what does it mean to the departments we're talking about? Actually, it gets easier for a few departments. There are a couple of departments that won't really have to go in and do an S&A proposal anymore. Maybe some departments are going to be more scrutinized by the, periodic S&A committee review, but that's not bad. And then if I was at the table, on the committee, and somebody comes in and they've got a proposal that says it's $500,000, usually you get a little nervous, like, oh my gosh, if I get this answer, if I don't make the right choice here, what will the future committees think of me? Well, I don't think this one should be that scary. Here is a picture of what the current situation looks like, right? You got the student union building fee going over to the publicity center and KCWU and student involvement, and the services and activity allocations going to the sub-engineering and student union operations. And here's what we're proposing. And it's quite subtle, but the dollar amounts don't change. So S&A can't really decide how the student union building fee is going to be allocated. But my understanding is that there's enough communication that there's kind of an agreement that if S&A funds these at the exact same amount that they were, how did it go back? Oh my gosh. So instead of crossing the funding, if we could get it more aligned with what are services and what are buildings, that the student union building fees would be follow suit. And really, in my mind, it's just kind of housekeeping. So that was pretty fast. Of course, we're not asking you to make a decision tonight. I have plenty of time for questions. It could be some of these same questions that I tried to touch on, or others, and Joey could help give his thoughts on the matter too. Joey has a question already.
Not a question. I'm going to chime in with what Pat said. Just to give context, because I know there's a lot of numbers and pieces here, so I'm going to try and simplify and tell me if any of this sounds wrong, Pat. Really what it is we have, and the pieces he was showing on that chart with the areas are split funded. And so Publicity Center, as you all know, receives S&A funding, and they're also receiving some sub funding. What this is doing is untangling that. So these units on here, when you go to it, would be fully S&A funded, and the ones on the sub side would be fully sub funded. So it's detangling some of that. What it means at the end of the day is a zero
and that's why I said,
net.
Sorry,
right. Pat.
No, that's great. And that's helpful, because when I was going through, I go, a portion of this department is funded through this. And way at the beginning, I said something along the lines of, that might have been good for forcing cooperation and conversation years ago, and maybe that's how they tried to balance things out. But
yeah,
so yeah, that's true, Joey. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, you all will discuss and deliberate and vote next week. But can you go back to the slide you were just on, where it's going straight down, Pat? What it means is for the services, as Pat said, there won't be any change. There won't be any change. What it will look like, though, optically for us, is that S&A will not be providing base funding to sub-engineering and will not be providing base funding to student union operations. However, we will increase the funding to publicity KCW student involvement campus activities by the dollar figures that are shown there. So that doesn't mean that's going to be their full allotment. That's what's going to be added on top of their current one. So they're fully funded from the S&A unit. So I think that was just the clarification part I was going to share on that
Right.
side.
Yeah, because if this is approved, the next time you see a publicity report, it will say more than 114.
Yep.
Because there's a portion that's already funded.
And so we would have some pretty strong documentation, just so you all know, on the website, but also for future committees, because it's going to look like partway through the funding cycle, these areas got a big increase in their base funding and we stopped funding the other two, which technically, yes, but that's really, we just moved where the funding was coming from. So are there questions from anyone on the committee about this kind of proposal, discussion, why we're doing this, what it means?
Not here. This seems pretty straightforward, right? The pictures, seeing the different tangle and untangle, you know.
Yeah, and we're doing this in other parts of the university too, that there are fees collected in housing that and dining that, you know, have been for years. And nobody seems to know quite why. We're trying to get it. It's really a housekeeping thing. And so maybe by mentioning that this is not the only one that we're looking at the university, it might put you a little bit more at ease too. But if you have questions before the next meeting, you know, I'd be willing to, I don't know how that process works, if you send a question to Joey and he sends it to me, or if you're allowed to, yeah. I'm willing to get back to you prior to next Wednesday on any kind of question you might have. So I think that's my presentation, if I can figure out how to stop sharing.
Thank you.
I'll go back to vacation. I'm in Bend, Oregon. It's beautiful down here.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you
Enjoy
for the
that.
time. Okay, I'm gonna leave. I appreciate you hosting me here and have a good meeting.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Pat. Bye.
All right. With that, if there's no objections, we can continue on to our base funding program reviews. So this week we're reviewing the Observer, the Office of Case Management, and the Office of International Studies and Programs. Did anybody have any questions for the Observer review? This one's pretty thorough. Yes, Jared.
I did have one question. What's the dollar amount?
On what in specifically?
That they're base funded, is that what you're asking, Jared?
Yeah, like what's the dollar amount that the Observer is essentially getting here?
Conveniently, I have the base funding things pulled up here in the background. So the Observer on here is getting funded at 56,000. Yep. So 56,375.
Okay, and if you wouldn't mind looking at the other, okay, so there's case management.
Yep, right up
And
here, 170.
the
And what's our
other
third one
is
today?
International.
Office of International is right below
15K.
15,000.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Are there any other questions about the Observer? I'm seeing shakes of heads around the room. I'm just skimming it through one last time myself. Yeah, no, this was great. I thought kudos to Mr. Francesco. that this was really well written. Do we wanna, then if there's no objections, we can continue on to Office of Case Management?
I mean, if you want to talk about detail and thorough, this is the place to be. Look at all these statistics and graphs.
Yeah, some of these were really interesting. Are there any questions about them?
I did have one. I'm not going to raise my hand because I'm already talking. So on case management, they mentioned that of their 4 full-time employees, one of them essentially got promoted into the role where the previous director got promoted to oversee the entire operation. So this leaves them with 3 full-time employees, and they're essentially asking for the same amount of funding so they can replace that employee that got promoted, essentially. That's what it sounds like to me. Is that what it sounds like to everybody else?
So I'll provide some clarification, Jared. It may sound like that. Case management is one, talking about the untangling that we just had. Case management, 2 of the case managers are funded by S&A. The director and one of the other case managers are funded actually by state funding. And so if my memory serves correctly, I think both the director who was moved into an interim role and the case manager who moved into the interim director role are the 2 who are funded by the state funding, if memory recalls. And so it's the other 2 that are fully funded by S&A. And so they're really giving the rundown on where it is. It's not a request. This is just part of their program review with where things are currently this year.
You have a thumbs up from Jared. For the record. There any other questions for this program review?
My calico is meowing, but I can't interpret her question into English, so let's move on.
All right. No human objections. It's with that, we have Office of International Studies and Programs. I think I had a question on this one. Let's see. Yeah, I did have a quick question on this one, Joey. I mean, it's not really a question. I'm just surprised to see on the answer to question 10 is just no. And I'm just curious if there's any more there to unpack.
I don't have an answer to it.
Yeah.
In this one, in the name again being Office of International Students, it really isn't funding obviously their whole piece, as Jared kind of asked. We looked at it's only $15,000. Really, what it is for is to provide programs and services for those student populations. And so, if you recall back when we looked at the financial reports, a portion of that can, and it depends on the year, go towards a couple student salary lines, so student wages to put on and facilitate these programs, these events and things to go out to. So it's possible that no, there's no current challenges or impacts because they haven't seen any impacts with certain things. And so they're using their funding well, and we have our international students back on campus after we had the freeze with international travel previously. So I don't have a full answer, but that would be my speculation on why they said, nope, there's no challenges right now.
I suppose, yeah, that helps a lot. I guess I was more surprised to see that in conjunction with the following answer, if they want to hire more employees, which I think is a great idea. They seem intertwined to me a little bit, but maybe not for them.
it could be the way the question is asked is, again, they would like to be able to hire more students. Even if you look at question 9, with, again, the 10% reduction, it did impact some of the amount they could pay for trips. So I think for them, they're like, no, we had no problem spending all of our allocation. In fact, we needed more money than what it is. That's how I might read how they answered the question.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there any other questions from anybody? Not seeing any questions pop into mind. All right. If there's no objections, we can move on to our old business. Do we have any old business this week? No, we have no old business this week. That is just on the agenda still.
It's always on there in case we have old business to fill in. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then for public comment, second call, we would like to open the floor for anybody to make a comment. We always welcome any comments in our committee. Joey,
I'm just going to reiterate as a public comment, but what Brady shared during the ACW report, just as a reminder, we have slightly less than 24 hours left for the ACW general election. And so if you haven't had the chance, please go out and vote. It's not only voting on the executive board positions and one of the student senate positions, but it's also voting on 2 referendums related to student fees. One is a potential increase and one is instituting a new fee. And so please encourage others that you know, if you know of people who have or have not. It does close tomorrow at 5 p.m. And so we want to make sure we get as good a sampling of students as we can. We've already had, as of when I looked earlier today, 230 students who had voted, but would love to see more, since obviously we have far more students in our student body. So please vote if you haven't, and encourage others to vote as well.
awesome. Thank you. I think I'm doing that right after this meeting. And I'm gonna post in all my student chats. All right, with that, that's leaves us with adjournment at, if there's no objections, we can adjourn at 5:38. I will see you all again next week.
Have a great week, all. See you on
Thank you.
Thursday. Bye, Kitty.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.